All right, we're going to be talking a lot of stuff in chapter 23. The first thing we're talking about is the Protestant Reformation. So let's get back. I mean, the Catholic Church is the huge unifying feature in Europe, in Western Europe, and they are full. It's the biggest part. I mean, it unifies everything. It's people's religious centers, it's their social centers. In a lot of ways, it's a lot of people's economic centers. And one of the guys going around is Friar. His name is Johann Tetzel. Johann Tetzel claimed about indulgences, and he's trying to get a soul released from purgatory and carried to heaven as the money tinkles into these boxes. And Martin Luther is a friar who sees this. And Martin Luther is a very talented man, and we'll talk more about it in a second. And those incidences are going to spark the Protestant Reformation. Think of what Protestant means. Protestant. They're protesting the Catholic Church. Here's kind of it's a revolt against the church as the political affairs, and a lot of it is, remember that the church was highly involved in political entities as well, and the Pope is definitely a political figure. And so it's going to start with Martin Luther in Germany, and then it's going to spread basically throughout Europe, whether that's through John Calvin, or then it's going to go to England and change the monarchy flat out. And by the end of this, in the late 16th century, so the late 1500s, a united Christian Europe is not within reach anymore. And so you're going to end up with two sides, Protestants and Catholics. This will be the into the third major group of Christianity. You have Catholics, you have Orthodox, and then you have Protestants. And so the first group of Protestants we are going to talk about is basically where the Protestant Reformation starts, and that is with Martin Luther. Luther's a very talented man. He's a very talented writer. At one time, he'd wanted to be a lawyer, but he becomes a monk, a friar, and he is going to call for a thorough reform of the Christian church. He is very disturbed by the sale of indulgences, so he always wants those gone. He thinks that monks and priests should hold no higher value than a lay person, that lay people or somebody not in the church can very much live a Christian life, and that a monk, a priest is no better than a lay person. So get rid of priestly and papal authority. The Pope should not have the final say on everything. The Bible should. The belief of sola scriptura is a huge thing here, that the scripture alone should drive the beliefs of that part of the church. He also is disturbed by what the church calls good works, that good works are a part of how you get into heaven. And he doesn't see that. He sees that faith alone. He sees that it's a lot of he sees that the Catholic Church has gotten into a lot of tradition, and he very much disagrees with this. He also disagrees that the Bible should only be in Latin. He thinks it should be in the language of whatever the people speak. That is the vernacular. In this case, his vernacular is German. So the Protestant Reformation is going to start with him putting the 95 Theses on the Wittenberg Church in 1517. He will start with that, and he posts them, and this immediately starts a movement against the Catholic Church. At first, Luther does not want to leave the Catholic Church. He just wants to reform the Catholic Church. But his ideas catch hold very quickly among princes. And remember, we're in the middle of the Holy Roman Empire here, so the princes have a ton of power. And if we can maybe do this, we can gain some political power for ourselves and take some political power away from the Pope and the Holy Roman Emperor himself. And so what you look at is the princes love his ideas. And eventually what's going to happen here is Luther is going to translate the Bible. He's going to get excommunicated or kicked out of the Catholic Church. And these group of people that are going to follow Luther's teachings become known as Lutherans, which are one of the main groups of Protestants. Okay. So now a second group of people, a second Protestant Reformation is going to form. And the second Protestant Reformation, just another part of the Protestant Reformation, is led by a man by the name of John Calvin. John Calvin, and he will get his beliefs out there in what is called Calvinism. It's a theology belief. John Calvin starts his writings in France, which is very Catholic dominant. And since the French try to suppress basically anything not Catholic during this time period, he escapes to Switzerland and will do most of his works, including writing here, the Institutes of the Christian Religion in 1536, so not just after Luther. He'll do most of his work in Geneva, Switzerland. And his work emphasized the omnipotence of God and salvation of the elect in God's grace alone. Part of his beliefs is something called predestination, is that you can't do anything to your stature of whether you're going to get to heaven or not is already predestined for you. And so this demands a strict code. You would think that that means that they might go around and do whatever they want, and that's not the case, because they believed that they needed to go around and show that they were saved. And so they needed to show, as they would say, Jesus Christ's love to all, which therefore requires that strict code of morality and discipline. And it's also very popular with missionaries who go out and spread the good word to all. And so, in other words, while it's similar to Luther says faith alone. Luther thinks that the person's in charge of that, and that Calvin would say that God is in charge of whether you make it into heaven or not. Now, next is we go to England. And one of the things you should have noticed here throughout is that, especially with Luther, it is also a political movement. It's a political movement against the church. Well, that's very true in England. You have King Henry VIII. King Henry VIII rules there from 1509 to 1547. He wanted a boy. And what is the belief at that time was that women were in charge of the gender of a baby. And when his wife, Catherine of Aragon, would not let him the belief was not have a son, he has a problem with that. He wants a divorce. I mean, Catherine of Aragon had multiple miscarriages, including boys, and so he wants to get out of this. Henry VIII was seen as the defender of the Catholic faith for a long time. You see that picture there on the slide, where he's with a high-ranking cardinal in the Catholic faith. Well, he wants out. He wants out, and the Catholic Church says no, they will not let him get a divorce from Catherine of Aragon. Also, a side note here, Catherine of Aragon is also the aunt of the leader of the Holy Roman Empire, and so there's these political battles are going on within England and the Holy Roman Empire, basically to try to keep England within the Catholic Church. In the end, Henry VIII breaks away. After a long series of debates in Parliament, he breaks away and makes a new church. It's called the Anglican Church. And at this time, there were only two differences between the Anglican Church and the Catholic Church. Those two are, as you could probably guess, divorce is now legal, and second, the king is now the head of the church, not the Pope. So the Anglican Church at this time was almost identical, with just one big difference of who's the head of it, but then divorce. And he goes and marries Anne Boleyn. Anne Boleyn, she has miscarriages too, and she's executed. The third wife, Jane Seymour, finally gives him a birth to a baby boy, and so now you have England is separated as well. This former defender of the Catholic faith has now created his own church, and so between the whole parts of the Holy Roman Empire, Switzerland and his beliefs are spreading, and Calvin's beliefs spreading in the Netherlands and parts of what we now know today as the United Kingdom, and England, the Catholic Church needs to respond. The Catholic Church needs to respond. What they do is they establish the Council of Trent. It lasts for 18 years, 1545 to 1563. And what they do is they work with the works of Thomas Aquinas to defend the work of Catholic theology. They don't really change anything theologically. They try to get rid of some of the corruption with strict morality calls, but the biggest couple things they do is they establish new schools. So the Society of Jesus, known as the Jesuits, led by St. Ignatius Loyola, is from the Basque region. He was a former soldier, and while recovering from those works, he started reading a ton of Christian works in theology, and so he makes it his life mission, basically, to become a missionary, and he is going to establish schools literally throughout the world, because this is the heart of exploration as well, and they're determined to bring the teachings of the Catholic Church around the world, China, Japan, Philippines, anywhere in the Americas, and so these Jesuits are going to spread the Catholic faith and also establish schools throughout the world. All right, so what do you need? When it comes down to it, you should know a couple things from this lecture. First, what was Luther against? That's the big part of it. What's Luther against? Princes like him. There you go. Calvin, predestination. English Reformation. Just the Catholic Church loses power. That's the overall theme here. The Catholic Church is losing power, and people are protesting them, and so they have to respond.